Okay, happy Wednesday, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here for this study hall today. Interesting topic. How cool is cool climate with Monika Vescovi, who is a Master of Wine student and a holder of the diploma WSET. She's going to be talking about and telling us exactly how cool climate is. And it's going to be focused on winemaking in Poland. So for anyone out there studying about wines, this is going to be a really fascinating topic. So let me go ahead and bring Monika on the broadcast here. Let's see. It's taking a minute here. For some reason, my... Okay, there you are. Okay. Hey, Monika, how are you?
Very well. Beautiful day to be talking about cool climate and cool climate winemaking. So, welcome to Napa Valley Wine Academy FB Live. Today, I will take you to Poland, but I will focus on challenges that are faced by winemakers in cool climatic conditions. So you can take that knowledge also and apply it to some other cool climate wine regions. So when you study WCT or when you simply study wine, you are always taught that the sweet spot for the winemaking and for production is between 30th and 50th latitude north and south of the equator, and that it is very hard to actually successfully make wine in other climatic conditions. And for most of the part, it is true. However, that may surprise you today, that you are finding vineyards and wine producing regions outside of that zone. So today I will take you to Poland. I will discuss what are the factors needed to aid the grape ripening and to help the production and what to look for in order to make wine in challenging conditions. So when we go to Poland, we have a temperate climate. But is it an imperfect climate? No, because we have different climatic influences in Poland. So we do have relatively cold winters and warm summers. And that we have the great influence of oceanic currents from the west and cold polar air from Scandinavia and Russia. So in the south, we also have subtropical air. So all of those influences, having the sea in the north, a Baltic Sea, having the mountain ranges in the south, will influence the climatic conditions in Poland. So yes, we do have a northerly location, and that means we have less sunshine hours and less warmth for grape ripening, which prompts us naturally as the winemaking area to produce more of the white grape varieties and to produce white wines. But there's a red wine making in Poland as well. The style will be different from what you will be experiences in other regions, but I will be talking about it in just a moment. So rains can be a severe problem because rain brings us rot. So when there is a lot of rain, one way to of course deal with the rots is to use the sprays, but yeah, we do have some of the organic and biodynamic producers in Poland. So what is the most important thing to actually successfully produce grapes and make wine in cooler climatic condition is the location. So one of the most important things is actually choosing the perfect spot. If you see the picture that's here on the screen, and if you have seen a picture before, you see the hilly sides. In some of the conditions, this is the very, very important thing. Not all actually Polish vineyards are on hillsides, but they have other influences. For example, in the north of Poland, we have the sea influence. So the Baltic Sea actually brings in that maritime influence. What it does, it sort of evens out the temperatures throughout the year. So the winter is not as severe, but the summer is not as hot as it would be in the south of Poland. This picture is taken actually in the south of Poland, close to Krakow, in the Małopolska Voivodeship, which I will show you on the map later on, is the place where we have at the moment the highest amount of vineyards and the producers in Poland. So the aspect will be another very important thing to longer the sunshine hours. So we're looking at the southerly aspects. We're looking at the inclination as well, so we can have longer sunshine hours throughout the day. So also are varied throughout the whole of Poland, but the location of the vineyard is the key. Actually, I've known some winemakers that haven't always had the chance to successfully make wines. And what happened, they actually moved their vineyards from the location where they weren't able to ripen the grapes fully, and where they had too much problems with rot, just because, it was the first time, the first location. They simply had a piece of land and they decided, we want to make wine. So when that didn't work, they actually did the research and found the perfect spot, and they are today one of the oldest and best producers in Poland. So it does take an entrepreneur to make wine in Poland or in cool climatic conditions altogether, because all odds could be against you. So you actually have to be very creative in on the one hand, looking at the market and envision that your wines eventually will sell in the market. And on the other hand, you have to have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experiences. Many people do come to the market with knowledge, but experience is one of the most important things. I'll give you one example of the situation where winemakers actually had to move their vineyards and abandon their vineyards and move the location into another place. There's another very successful today winery that when they were setting up the vineyard, they were setting it up on slope, and they were very unfortunate with huge amount of rain the year they put down the plantings. So what they didn't do at that point, they didn't have the in between row plantings. They didn't have any grass to sustain the soil, and the rain literally swoop out all of the vines, and actually they had to take several carloads of the sand and the soil that ran down the hill, and pretty much rebuild the whole vineyard again. So those were the experiences that the winemakers had to face when they were starting to plant the vineyards. So grape varieties grown in cooler climates. You probably heard of the hybrids of pewees. Pewee is a fungus-resistant grape variety. And those were very often we exchange the word hybrid today for pewee in European Union. So what happens, those fungus-resistant grape varieties are often planted in cooler climatic conditions. Why is that? Well, fungus-resistant grape varieties in climatic conditions where there's a lot of rain, when there are a lot of challenges, are proven to do really well, and they can resist not only fungus, but they also will resist cool climatic conditions, especially severe winter conditions. So in the winter, it is absolutely crucial that the temperatures don't fall behind -20 for a longer period of time. Because what will happen if they do? some of the hybrids, some of the vitis vinifera that aren't actually resistant, they will die over the winters. They will never wake up in the spring. So pewees, they will be fungus resistant, but they will all be also frost resistant, which is also an important thing. So another reason why there's such a popularity of those grape varieties planted in cool climatic conditions. So in Poland, we have 159 grapes varieties planted, but we have a division of both the pewees, the hybrids, and the vitis viniferas. So actually, we have started traditionally, historically, which is very interesting, with the hybrids. So what happened there, one of the pioneers of the winemaking in Poland, Roman Myśliwiec, he started his first vineyard where he was actually working on what would be the best grape varieties in cooler climatic conditions of Poland. And for many years, he was cultivating hybrids, and he was discussing the difficulty of the planting hybrids, planting other grape varieties than hybrids around Poland. But we learned later on that hybrids do well in some of the severe climatic conditions, like south part of Poland, which is Subcarpathian regions, because the winters are there more severe. But if we go to the slightly milder climatic conditions, if we are at the seaside with the sea influence, if we are in the Małopolska region, which is it's also in English called Lesser Poland, and when we are there, the climatic conditions are less severe. And with time, some of the winemakers started also planting the vitis vinifera, and it turns out that some of the vitis viniferas that are enjoying the cooler climatic conditions, like Pinot Noir, like Chardonnay, they were doing well, and they are doing well. Of course, if we look at the data and we look at the statistic, I mean, the development is only 1 decade long. So it is not that much. We're looking at 30 years of research and study. We're looking at the last 10 years of the development. But what I see within Polish winemaking, that a lot of winemakers did a tremendous jump in quality very quickly. They're learning, they're studying, they're improving. And every year we see better and better quality, and we see more and more successes with vitis vinifera. But there's always that discussion: should we plant vitis vinifera, and should we plant pewees, the hybrids, and what's best in this in a particular plant? There are some of the winemakers that decided to actually and vineyard managers that decided we're planting vinifera alone, but not many of them. A lot of them are actually dividing their space into vitis vinifera and hybrid, just in case, just to have that fall back into the hybrids, because hybrids can actually make good wines as well. So the 5 most planted red grape varieties in Poland are Regent, Rondo, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Cortis, and Marshall Foch. And 5 most planted white varieties are Solaris, Riesling. Riesling is doing very well. So Chardonnay, Seyval Blanc, Johanniter, and aromatic Hibernal. So other the vitis viniferas that you will find in Poland as well will be Gewürztraminer, Pinot Blanc, Zweigelt, Merlot, or Sauvignon Blanc. Actually, the Sauvignon Blanc also will be on the rise as well. So where is Poland? You might be wondering, where is Poland? So we are located in Central Europe. Many people are thinking of Poland as the Eastern Europe. In fact, it is central, and it has 38 million people. What does it mean? A lot of possibilities to find a new market for wine, right? Traditionally, this market was known for high-proof spirits, of course, production of vodka, but also production of beer. But there are several changes in the market right now. So what happens right now, the market is changing the profile, the structure of how they're consuming alcoholic beverages. And that shift is towards wine. So now, today in Poland, we see 295 registered wine producers. So actually, those are registers. What does it mean? They are able to sell in the market, in the stores, but there are several others that are producing the wine as an agricultural product, or they simply are producing wine without selling it. And we see actually much higher amount of wine producers in Poland that will eventually get to the same route to the market to be able to sell their wine. So the alcoholic beverage market is quite big, 32.6 billion of Polish złotych. And annual wine consumption is growing by 5% a year, which is also a tremendous market for wines. We do drink a lot of wines from other countries like Italy and Bulgaria, but we are observing that the customers there are really looking into consumption of Polish wines as well. So just a few things about history that actually refers to many countries in cooler climatic conditions where there was viticulture, before the recent development. So viticulture actually goes back to introduction of Christianity in 1966 in Poland. And first documented vineyards were located on Wawel Hill in Krakow. If you've never been to Poland, Krakow is one of the most amazing, most beautiful cities in Poland. And the Wawel Hill, which is essentially a castle, is one of the magnificent places to visit there. So that used to everything around that hill used to be a vineyard. There is a very small vineyard right there, right by the castle as well. So Polish viticulture was connected to church for quite a large period of time, because the wine was made for the for church. It was used in church as well. So Cistercians, Benedictines, they also had vineyards right by the churches, and there was also in most of those churches there was always a position of the winemaker. So there was centuries ago there was a winemaker monk who would be responsible for making wine. So then we're moving on to roughly 16th century, where the climate changes. Once the climate started to change with the cold waves coming through Poland and the wars destroying winemaking in Poland, actually the wine production started to diminish, and the popularity of important goods comes in from warmer climatic conditions, from Hungary, for example, where we could get the reliable wines at the same quality year to year. So production was going down. Recent history, jump back to 1989, the change in structure of consumption in the alcoholic sector, actually a change, post-communistic change. Because you have to know that in Poland, it's actually during communism, we were responsible for making spirits there, but not responsible for making wine. So there is a drop in history where we weren't able in Poland to make wine at all. So after the Second World War, roughly until late 80s, the winemaking was pretty much non-existent. Once that's changed, once it was possible again, we see the growth of wine import, especially by restaurants. Then we are entering the EU and in 2004, and the market sees more of the diversity of wines, changing quality of wines, and the market for wines starts growing. The market for quality wines is starting to grow. It is important because there were wines available during the communism, but they weren't the quality wines. So now the structure of consumption is changing, but we have to educate the consumers, because consumers are not accustomed to high quality wines. So this is actually a work in progress that is happening right now. The education, the ongoing wine education, to be able to actually appreciate the high quality wine. And we see tremendous difference on the. I told you before that we've seen 5% of the rise in the sales of wines a year. Well, that also comes with the education. So that education about wine allows for that percentage to change year to year. So again, let's go back to the wine production, Polish wine production. So this is 295 wineries, but you see the number of hectares planted, it's relatively small. It's 483 hectares. It is not a lot. It could be one vineyard somewhere around the world in some of the, especially somewhere in the New World. So it's not a lot. The biggest vineyards are roughly around 30 hectares. There's the smallest can be below 1 hectare. So there's a lot of work within those producers that are taking this opportunity, to actually be stubborn and say, hey, we can brave the cool climate and we can make great wines, and we're going to see that number developing and going up over the next years. So there's no established denomination system, and this, if you look all around the world, you'll see that with newcomers to the wine production and winemaking, this is a case because it takes quite a lot of time to develop the denomination system, and it has to be backed up by funds as well. So this is opportunity with time. I know this will develop. I know there were talks in the market already to establish the denomination system based on the European Union rules, and eventually it will be in place, but it may take even another decade to do so. We'll see, hopefully less, but we'll be watching. So the dynamic growth over the last 10 years, many changes over the last 10 years. I have been sitting in judging panels for actually last decades when it comes to Polish wines and tasting the wines from a decade ago, and today it's a tremendous difference in quality. Actually, those first trials, over a decade ago, were difficult ones. It's the winemakers, they were learning, they were studying. But the jump in quality between those 10 years is amazing. It's today you're looking like, what quality level am I at? If talking about WSET, is it good? Is it very good? Is it acceptable? The decade ago, we were at the points like, does it have a wine fault or not? So that jump over 10 years, it's a tremendous development. So what happens now, we can't call it a renaissance, but we actually, in Poland, we're redeveloping winemaking. We're developing a new structure. We're, of course, looking into the newest developments and around the world. And we have sort of two types of the wine production. One can be through the investments, and there are some that came through the investments fantastic investments when you were able to bring in the knowledgeable winemakers, to bring in the winemaking equipment, top winemaking equipment. This is one of the cases here in Turnau. Others started from the bottom up, meaning they started, with the planting vineyards and learning throughout the next steps. Actually, both sides have great successes. It's just a different way of approaching the business. So there's a great role of association, of wine producing association and wine related association in teaching the market and education. I think one of the most important things for all the developing markets today is the education of the consumers. It's educating about the wine production, about the styles of wine. And in case of Poland, or in case of all the cool climate conditions regions, it's really also educating about the cost. And I will show you a breakdown of the cost of a Polish wine, or the wine made in cool climatic conditions. And you see that it's actually pretty much at this point impossible to make inexpensive wines in cooler climatic conditions. So this is also another very hard thing that we have to look into economics of wine production, because we're making on the small scale. Remember, 1 to 30 hectares, and the investments are pretty much the same. If you're making smaller or larger, you have to have the same equipment. So it makes it much harder when it comes to investments. And then there are those additional sprays, for example, or additional precautions that you have to take in cooler climatic conditions, where you have to protect your vine from natural conditions, and that adds up to the cost. So we've talked about hybrids, peewees, and importance of the site choice. That's one of the pretty much number one thing that you have to start with when you are establishing a vineyard in cool climatic conditions. So just a few more things about the numbers in Poland. Wine consumption is 3.7 per capita, not including fruit wine. We do make a lot of fruit wines, fruit other than grapes, in Poland as well. So you may see numbers as high as 8. Well, that would generally include the fruit wine, and 10.3 liters of pure ethanol. So we do drink more of the other alcoholic beverages as well. So since 2004, sales of still wines in Poland grew by more than 50%. Great market to look into as well. Over 60% of wine is purchased by women. So it's same thing in many markets, right? So in many markets, it is a female that's purchasing a wine for the household, especially if it's available in larger stores where they're shopping. So this is also another thing to remember when it comes to marketing. I always like to think about that from the perspective of the motors that sustain the sales as well. So majority of wine consumers are over 35 years old with higher level of education. So let's take a look at the map. If you take a look at the map, that number 54, which stands out, that is Lesser Poland, that is Małopolska, that's where Krakow is as well. For the last decade, I was living in Krakow, so that's a very special place for me also. So you see that pretty much vineyards are around Poland in most of the places in Poland, but you see more of them in the south, and you see more of them in the western Poland, where there is that oceanic air influence as well. So looking at a Polish map, if you ever want to travel to Polish wineries, you'll find them everywhere. But if you want to travel to many of them, you may choose from the different regions. So basically, there are mountain ranges in the south that will influence also the wine production in Poland as well. Take a look at this. This is the wine production in Poland 2009 and 2019. There's two numbers that you see in the bottom. The blue is number of producers in Poland. That's been tremendously growing since 2009, as that marks the time when actually we had changes in a law where it was possible to make wine in Poland. And then there is the amount of hectares of vineyards that are growing, and that number will be growing, and it's projected to grow also. Let me see if I can make this work. If you pay close attention to those red dots, you will actually see that the development by region is changing tremendously, and we're getting more and more wineries. You are actually seeing more than 295 dots there, because this also includes the development that have not been registered. So Polish wine production cost. So according to study conducted by Wojciech Bosek, my good friend, this is the Polish production of Polish wine is roughly about $4.5. Just the cost. An average bottle of Polish wines on in retail is about $12.50. So this is the bracket where actually in Poland, this is a higher bracket already. In Poland, wines sell the most wine will sell about that 4.5, so about the cost, even slightly lower than that. So that makes it difficult already on the domestic market. So domestic market, which at this point is the major market, because there's only a small amount of wines introduced to other markets. So the domestic market is the market for the wines, and it's already high, fairly high price for that particular market. So this is a challenge to overcome, and that challenge can be overcome by education, by Enoturism, by bringing consumers to the wineries, and by actually showing them how the production looks like, how the Polish wines taste like, how the environment looks like, and explaining, so sometimes I would break down the cost with just to give an understanding, because consumers are thinking, why would I pay for Polish wine as much as for a very good international wine? So that explanation is necessary, and that education is necessary for this emerging market to understand the pricing. In that cool climatic conditions of Poland, we are also prone to make, I said, still white wines, but we are also prone to make sparkling wines. I remember when Hugh Johnson visited Poland several years ago, and we were showing him for the first time Polish wines, particularly based on Cheval Blanc. The first thing he said, hey, start thinking about sparkling wine production, because with the acidity you have in those wines, this is a perfect base for sparkling wines. And I do agree. A few years back, I've organized actually a conference with colleagues from Women in Wine Association that was based on the possibility, on the future of Polish winemaking, but also on the possibility of producing sparkling wines. And that was two years ago. Back then we had 13 producers. That number has grown, not tremendously, but has grown. And I'll tell you why not tremendously. You see, production of sparkling wine in a small quantity, it's actually even less cost effective than production of still wine. What does it mean? That some of the producers have to charge, somewhere between 25 to 30 $35 a bottle or even more. If you think about it, and you put that against a bottle of a champagne, so depending on which market you're at, but in states that the champagne will be slightly higher. In Great Britain, the cost of champagne will be, comparable, and you are wondering, so what do I buy? Again, education will come into place here in order to talk to consumers and actually tell them, hey, try the local product, see, compare the quality, because it always comes down to quality as well. So premium bottles are made in Poland as well. They will cost about 20 to 37 and a half, $40 retail. So again, the cost is high. The cost of the wine production is high, and due to that, the overall cost of Polish wine or wine produced in cooler climatic condition is higher as well. So. Starting winery in Poland. If you ever brave yourself and you wanted to start a winery there, 3 hectares will cost you about 308,000. So roughly. That's the initial investment with estimated production of 13,000 liters. Estimated annual income if you sell through distributors, because you can choose. You can sell through distributors, or you can sell through from your own premises. So if you sell through distributors, they will take the cut, and that will be around 21,000. But if you actually sell from your own premises, with 50% sales through distributor and 50% sales on premises, it will be 35,000. So if you think about it, and this is done throughout the world. This is done in many winemaking regions today. That very small on-premises sales, and it's the same thing falls in Poland. So again, if you want to look at the wine production versus wine consumption, it's still a very difficult place to plant. So you have to break for yourself. You have to have a plan. You have to give yourself a decade in order to brave yourself to bring the market and change the market. There are a lot of changes in the market right now. Let's talk about the style of the wines. Actually, I do have one here in front of me, a bottle of the Polish wine. This is one of the best producers in Poland, Winica Wieliczka, which is. This is international grape varieties. If you look here, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but you will see a Merlot and a Pinot Noir blend. An unusual blend, you will say, yes, but Merlot in Poland will have slightly different profile than what you expect in other climatic conditions. What does it mean? Overall, red wines in Poland, they will be lighter body, lighter style, with higher acidity, and we use less oak. Actually, with many wines, I prefer them an oak, because the oak tends to overpower the style that comes from those cooler climatic conditions altogether. So the style of white wine will bring in higher acidity, slightly leaner wines as well. So you have to keep that in mind when it comes to cool climate, that you will always have that more refreshing quality, higher acidity, lighter body in both whites and reds. And this is a style that many people choose today. Many people like today that very style of lighter, more refreshing wines. We do produce, I didn't mention that, but we also produce rosé wines. We also produce sweet wines in Poland. This is a rosé wine production is fairly small but growing. Because just like everyone in the world, we're seeing a tremendous growth in sales of rosé today. So actually, I feel like there is a demand. The winemakers are starting to produce because there is a demand today. We have been sort of slightly behind the trend, so now we're seeing that the rosé sales are growing, and there are some sweet wines made as well. There's particularly there are two wineries that stand out for me, or maybe actually three, with the quality of sweet wines. And one is producing a late harvest and ice vines, which is Vinica Turnau, and actually another one, Vinica Płochocki, is drying the grapes before they're going to make their sweet wines. Both are very good sweet wine styles as well. Vinica Jakubów is making great sweet wines also. And here it is, and Enoturism, we actually do see Ed Sheeran there. This is he was tasting a Polish wine from Vinica Jakubów. So Enoturism in Poland is a really growing industry. It's changing the face of how we drink wines as well, and how we introduce the wines to the market, because people can come to the winery, they can talk to the winemaker, and since those are small production facilities, they can actually talk to the winemaker, not the representative, and they can get the feel of the sense of a place, the sense of the hospitality. Poland is famous for its hospitality as well. So actually in those pictures you see all winemakers. On the left there is a couple from Vinica Płochocki, which they've been one of the biggest and one of the first promoters of Polish wines. They were the ones that moved the vineyard. They when the first one first tried, didn't work out perfectly. They set themselves up for another challenge, and they are actually extremely successful. They start one of the first places for Enoturism also. So a fantastic couple that actually has started also the Association of the Winemaker around Sandomierz as well, among with other great producers there. The other winemaker is from Vinica Jakubów, is actually making wines in Lower Silesia. So the growth of Enoturism, which sort of slowed down in the moment, and I'm observing from afar now, but I'm observing the development, and I see that there are many people, some of the great colleagues of mine, that are really helping tremendously the industry. So there were several webinars about Polish wines, and then they move on now to promoting the local wineries, and they're showing the local wineries, and they're bringing them closer to the consumer. And I think in these times, this is one of the most important things. So wineries started developing different activities to bring in consumers. Besides the regular wine tasting and wine dinners, the bonfires, the mushroom hunting, which Poland is abundant in wild mushrooms. So this is a good national sport, I would say. A lot of cooking classes, food and wine pairings, and embracing the healthy but relaxed lifestyle. So this is also a very important part of development of rural areas, and there are many in Poland, or in many cooler climatic conditions or in the regions, in the developing regions. So the rural areas are today the places where people want to run into and just turn off the Wi-Fi, turn off the phone. Actually, sometimes they simply hope there will be no Wi-Fi, and they can sit in peace in a great environment and just enjoy the nature. This is all still small scale. It will be growing. It will be changing. But this is just a glimpse for you of the cost, on the production, on the challenges that winemakers will face in cool climate in the regions that are developing. So I would like to thank you for joining me. Actually, I'm going to ask Chris if there are any questions. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, so we do a
Okay.
couple of questions. One, Sheila is asking if there is ice wine made in Poland.
Yes, there is. There is the Vinica Turnau. It's famous for ice wine productions. Again, we don't always get reliable climatic conditions for the ice wine production. So there are only times when we can make it. There were some wineries that produced before, but they don't produce on the consistent basis.
Okay, great. And then she has a follow-up question, and that is, what's the best month to go wine tasting in Poland?
Best, I would say June. I like June. Of course, I personally love September, but of course, in September, you can't get the winemakers to really pay attention as much as they will in other months. So during a month of June, you already have a beautiful weather. It can be great, but it can be tricky. Mm-hmm. But June is more reliable. Winemakers will still have a little more time for consumers. Of course, summer is great as well. If you get to the Enoturistic place where they actually have the guests coming to stay, the summer will also be fantastic time because you can go relax as well. To think about the visiting Polish vineyards, with many of them you have to make an appointment ahead of time. Not all of them have the doors open because you remember they're winemakers, they're the sales force, they're also their marketing force. So they wear many hats at the same time. So this is a very, very important thing and an important part to know that it is really mandatory to make an appointment before you're planning to go.
Great. Well, what a fantastic presentation, Monika. I know you've opened the eyes for a lot of viewers today about Polish wines. Any recommendations as to where in the U.S. they might be able to get their hands on some Polish wines?
No, from my knowledge at the moment. I hope if any winemaker from Poland is listening and you have sent it to US, let me know. I will pass it down. But at the moment, I don't know of anybody who sent their wines to US. I know places in the UK have imported, but not in US.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation today. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. I know I did. Join us back here on Saturday. You'll be interviewing a very special guest, right? You want to give us a little teaser as to the guest we have lined up for this Saturday?
Yes, so we're going to talk about South Africa. Sorry, we're going to talk about South Africa. I am going to talk with a specialist on the South African wines, Madeleine Stemridge, which she's a master of wine. So we will be talking about the developments, about the changes in the industry in South Africa. So join me at 11 Pacific. This is something that you may really enjoy because there are some beautiful wines coming today from South Africa, and they might be for many of you undiscovered yet.
Great. Yeah, I'm a big fan of South African wines. It's what I often consider one of the new old world countries, right? Making some delicious wines. So looking forward to having you back again. As a reminder, that's Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and we'll see you then. In the meantime, stay safe, be kind, and drink well. Cheers.
Cheers.